All righty. Um, I just wanted to, welcome everyone to this campus reopening listening session. This is the second listening session today. There was one this morning, and part of having a second listening session, means that definitely we have been able to appreciate some of the questions and comments and the perspectives that individuals brought to the first session, and I'll certainly use that to guide the conversation today, this afternoon. And I think one thing before I even get into housekeeping that I just want to make sure that folks understand and appreciate from this session is just that this is built as a listening session, and it's really focused on getting feedback and perspective and questions and concerns from the college community. So, I will certainly weigh in on some questions, and but very few actually. And I'm sure also folks can appreciate that there's a lot of just evolving topics and processes, and so some of this will be somewhat dated even a couple of days from now, particularly some of the conversations and questions related to vaccines. But again, I just want to make sure that folks appreciate and understand that this is really, the success of this listening session is really dependent upon all of you and the perspective, comments, questions that you provide, which will help the planning team as we're crafting kind of the overarching recommendations. And then the other thing I just want to also just kind of identify and acknowledge at the very beginning is that there are 4 individuals on the planning team. Our colleagues, Frank Kobayashi, the VPI at ARC, Monica Pactel, the VPI at FLC, Davin Brown, the VPSS at Sac City, and myself, the VPA here at CRC. And we're using all of this feedback and questions and just comments to help us to shape the overall kind of recommendations. But there's going to be a tremendous amount of work in terms of operationalizing all of this, and that's where we're really going to start kind of relying on folks to help and assist and actually do some of that. And this is the first time we've all done this, and certainly there's no playbook on any of this, but I would say that we're trying to do as thorough a universe of kind of comments, questions, concerns, include all of that in this initial kind of step 1, and then we'll eventually get to kind of further along in the process and operationalizing that, and I'll talk about that in the presentation. But I just want to kind of be really upfront, so as we begin this conversation and we move through this session, that folks kind of understand what's going to unfold. So with that, I will just go through some housekeeping items. And first, the chat feature is active, and I would encourage you to submit questions. I'm very fortunate this afternoon to have Christy West monitoring the chat. And at various points, she will be sharing some of the themes that are expressed. And, hopefully that'll help us to kind of get a sense of, what's been talked about and, what seems to be of most interest to folks on the listening session this afternoon. So I think I also mentioned that, again, this is trying to obtain as much feedback, comments, questions, concerns that would help, just give us a sense of, what are the things that we need to be considering as we're kind of moving through this process to come up with recommendations that then will be operationalized. I do want to say that we are having this second afternoon listening session here at CRC. Similar listening sessions will be occurring at ARC, Folsom, and Sac City. They'll be using the same PowerPoint. They'll be having those, I think, on Thursday and Friday. So we're kind of first out the gate. And I also wanted to say that there will be a student listening session, and I'll be working with colleagues here at CRC to advertise and communicate that, and certainly working with Christy, but Orskut, I'm also going to be sending you a note to help with just informing our Student Senate colleagues about that listening session. It'll be next Thursday. I think it's at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, but I'll get that. Everything is kind of moving pretty quickly.
5 o'clock.
Oh, 5 o'clock. Okay,
Yep.
Thank you, Christy. But we'll definitely be communicating that out to individuals so that students will have an opportunity to participate in a listening session. And that one will be one where all 4 of the planning team members will be participating. So, with that, I'm going to keep kind of moving along here. One thing before we get too deep into this reopening plan activity, and this made a lot more sense this morning when I was drinking my hot tea, but I don't know if folks can see this, and I don't know if folks are tracking or aware of kind of one of the most essential pieces of swag to start the 2021 spring semester. Nothing says CRC is amazing better than this 50th anniversary mug. And I'm making a bit of a plug for it. I'm asking Christy to put the web link for this into the chat. I think folks may have seen the notice that went out during spring semester. It's a very cool mug. You get a pen, but you also support our students and the activities that they're most needing assistance with. So just wanted to make a plug for that. And I've also purchased 3 mugs that I'd like to give away this afternoon. And I have a question. And if anyone might have by any chance heard the question from this morning, just know it's a very different question that I'm going to ask, but I'm going to ask this question, and the first 3 correct answers, and Christy will be the judge, she'll just supply me that information and we'll get you a mug shipped out to you. But my question is, and answer this in the chat, is what are the cities in Sacramento County? What are the cities in Sacramento County? So the first 3 individuals to answer that question correctly will get a mug shipped to your home. So just wanted to just share this, just again, the amazing mug. Thank you, Michelle Steiner, for all your work in kind of navigating that through, and Christy, but just, again, just a little CRC, swag, a little CRC activity to support our students. Now, before I start in the PowerPoint, I think, and I've said this a couple of times already, this is a listening session, and most of the time that we're going to spend is going to be hearing your recommendations and your questions and your concerns and your thoughts. So one thing I also wanted to underscore and make sure folks are aware that this isn't the only time that you're going to be able to supply feedback. And I don't know, Christy, if you're done with the answers. Hopefully we got 3 correct answers.
We're getting them too fast because y'all are doing them individually. Could you put them all in one? I'm like, what? Just, matter of fact, Teresa, maybe you can tell them how many there are and make sure that you.
There are 7 cities in Sacramento County. So put them all in one chat message, and the first person to get that to Christy.
Thank you.
The first 3 people to get that to Christy.
Thank you. Okay, now here is the website.
All right, so this website that Christy is making available in the chat, this is the website for CRC's kind of just explanation of this process. It's the reopening plan process. And it's the same website across all of the 4 colleges. It has the charge for this activity. It has the timeline, and these are things that we'll go over in the presentation here today. But I also want to say, you know, if you scroll down a bit, you'll see that there's also a feedback that's being requested. You can do this online. It categorizes the feedback into themes, the same themes I'm going to talk about today, but you know, we're asking for your feedback so that, you know, this is not the only time that you have an opportunity to provide it. You'll have an opportunity at your leisure. Although I will say we do need to capture all of this for a report that will be submitted to the chancellor by the end of the month. So the sooner the better, but you know, by all means, this is not limited to just this flex session to provide your feedback. So with that, I'm going to go through the slide deck and you know, start to go through the formal presentation here. So, you know, I think I talked a little bit about what the listening session, you know, purpose is, and we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about the timelines, the guiding principles, key issues. I'm going to hear from everyone on the call. And how many people are on, by the way, right now, Christy? I can't see that actually.
84.
Oh, okay, 84. Okay, and then we're going to go through next steps. So again, you know, this is our listening session. You know, our charge in detail is on the website, and I'd encourage folks to take a look at that, you know, while we're here in this session together. But, you know, again, we're trying to put together high-level planning, which means, you know, we really are, again, relying on the college community to share with us those areas that, you know, we may, you know, we just don't want to have not included in the report. I mean, we're relying on, you know, kind of going far and wide across the entire district to make sure that all the appropriate concerns and topics are raised in the initial kind of listening session, and then of course we'll find our way into the eventual reopening plan. And again, you know, this is reliant on feedback, and I talked about, you know, all of us in the college community, students, and then of course we've given you the website. I think I mentioned that, you know, this period starting with Flex is, you know, kicking off all of the stakeholder feedback. You know, again, we have the website to take feedback. This session is being recorded. Everything in the chat will be recorded. We'll also be kind of categorizing this and supplying it as information in terms of, you know, just, you know, the things that were raised at this particular Flex session. But again, there's opportunities to weigh in throughout kind of the next couple of weeks here in terms of just trying to ensure we've got the broadest you know, universe of topics and issues that could potentially come up in the reopening plan. As it's noted on the slide, the final recommendations will due at the end of February. And of course, you know, as I mentioned at the beginning, the only way that those actually kind of become real and operationalized is really relying on a variety of individuals across the college to ensure that, you know, from kind of high level recommendation that they're operationalized, I mean, smoothly and well, so that, you know, folks are clear in understanding how things are going to evolve. So the first kind of topic, and if you are looking at the website, you probably have noticed this already, is, you know, we're trying to identify, you know, guiding principles for this reopening plan. And this slide just seeds a couple of just themes, and there's likely many more that we should be considering for inclusion in terms of guiding principles. But here we just mentioned safety, equity, transparency, and communication. And so certainly like you to weigh in on those, but also feel free to weigh in on the website at your leisure or now in terms of guiding principles. The next topic area are key issues, and we break them down by general, instructional, student services, and operational. And so when you look at general, I mean, you can see we kind of dive into a little bit more granular detail there in terms of status of the virus and the vaccine, safety, hygiene, communication, equity, COVID-19 compliance issues, just return to work, campus and office access. These are just topics that we'll hope will kind of start to get folks thinking about ensuring that ideas, concepts, questions that touch on all of these will be kind of shared with us during the listening session. And then we're kind of going to go down the next three in a similar fashion. And again, these are just we might be missing something from this list. This is an opportunity definitely to hear feedback. Maybe there's another category we should have under general. So I'm hearing a little bit of feedback, and I'm going to try to fix that if I can. Oh, it seems to have magically gone away. Hopefully. Okay. Hopefully that worked. All right, so now we're talking about instructional, just topics online versus on ground, faculty preparedness, instructional programs. Again, these are just some topics to get folks to start to think about, comments, concerns, questions that should be addressed in the eventual reopening plan. Then student services online versus on ground, student resources, student impact. Again, these are just meant to be kind of broad thematic, just things to kind of start the thinking in terms of what potentially is missing, what needs to be added, what needs to be refined, related to just feedback on this topic. And then the next one, operational, kind of again, same thing, kind of online versus on ground, prep time, facility usage, and funding. So we tried to just put together a construct to receive feedback, and so this is kind of the start of that. And I think this is a bit of a summary from all of those slides that just captures kind of all of the topics and the areas from the general key issues. The one it doesn't have here is the guiding principles, but again, just trying to capture all of those topics. So I'm going to leave this up here for right now. I'm going to maybe ask Christy to take a look at what is in the chat now, and maybe just kind of start just sharing some of the comments that are coming in. And by no means will that be the only means to solicit feedback. We could certainly open this up and folks can take themselves off mute and just share comments. I mean, we're recording it, so we'll record that. But maybe just generally, Christy, if you can share some of the themes that you're seeing come across the chat.
There's just some questions about the vaccine and whether or not it will be mandatory or optional. And then what about the people that do not want to get the vaccine? Just that right now is the main question.
Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you, Christy. And I would say this is probably one of those areas that is evolving, very much in real time. I was able to sneak a peek at the recorded statewide chancellor's office just Wednesday morning just session that they typically do a couple times a month. And they had a slide specifically on this topic, the vaccine, and they were talking about they're doing coordination with the Cal Office of Emergency Services and trying to identify, the potential colleges that are potentially engaging, will engage in being a vaccination site. But also, I'm sure you all on the Zoom meeting today are aware of select colleges up and down the state for who are already acting as a vaccination site. The Vice Chancellor of Communication at the State Chancellor's Office also kind of shared at least a broad statewide tiering of the levels in terms of eligibility for the vaccination. And of course, at the top was were healthcare workers. And then, talked about, in the next tier, it's very broadly defined as education. And then, of course, if you go to Sac County, they similarly have this kind of tiering as well. They identify as education. I think, one of the things that, we have to still kind of unpack is, I think for us, we would imagine that education encompasses kind of the entire, all of our community. But we're not sure if there's fine tuning that might be done to kind of identify, some groups on the campus versus others. But again, these are all pieces of information that are coming out in real time, and we'll have some better information. I think, though, one thing that kind of struck me as I was listening to that webinar this morning, the Vice Chancellor of Communication for the State Chancellor's Office basically identified the realm of the universe of education and the number of potential individuals in that area, and that includes K-12, but about 8.5 million, which is a pretty significant number of individuals. And then you think about like what the number of vaccines are that the state has received, and obviously there's a bit of a disconnect in terms of having that 8.5 million vaccines ready to go. But I'm sure folks are tracking that there's a lot of processes that are getting put together in real time just to do the vaccination. So definitely more to come. So I appreciate that, Christy. Any other comments?
Yes. So on your slide under instructional key issues, you have faculty preparedness. Can you explain that? And can we maybe facilitate that going out to other staff as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will say that is probably one that Monica and Frank probably had a little bit more of a thinking on when we put that together. I'm going to have to, I will find out, and I think that is definitely something we can, certainly put down and expand upon. And yeah, I just can't recall specifically what was the what was the impetus for that. And I don't even want to guess, because I think they had something very specific, and for the life of me, I just can't remember.
And then do you anticipate that the campus will open in phases? And if so, how is social distancing supposed to take place?
Yeah, those are great questions. Thank you for submitting those. I think, we don't have all of the answers on that in terms of, the very operational social distancing piece. I think, though, it makes a lot of sense that this would happen in phases, that we would plan for a certain potential outcome and then react and respond, depending upon, where we are as a county, obviously adhering to, state of California and county, public health guidance. And so that will obviously kind of impact the direction related to social distancing and the number of people and so forth. But yeah, that's a great question. And there'll be more information over the course of the next couple of months to help illuminate that.
Another question, could CRC become a vaccination distribution center in service to our community?
Yeah, my sense is that the chancellor's office was definitely outreaching and, you know, asking those types of questions. Um, you know, I'm, you know, can't say I've necessarily heard about it at this moment, but I think it's not something that you know that couldn't happen. I think, again, this is all moving so very quickly. I mean, I guess particularly given, you know, we were all understanding that there was a tiering in terms of how the vaccination was going to be distributed. And I would say that that was actually one other comment that the Vice Chancellor for communications at the statewide level was sharing, that there's such a different approach between the outgoing Trump administration and the incoming Biden administration in terms of the federal guidance related to kind of the tiering of individuals to receive. So I think this is kind of evolving. So again, good question, and you know, hopefully we'll have some more insight to share. I will say that, you know, in the instances where I've heard that community colleges are vaccination sites, those colleges have benefited in the sense that, you know, in days when there are no more individuals coming to get the vaccination, a call goes out to the college and individuals are invited that, you know, may not necessarily, you know, be in the kind of that tier at that moment, but because we all know that these vaccines kind of have a time certain and temperature certain kind of just need to be utilized by a certain time, individuals at the college have benefited and they've been administered the vaccine.
Once we are able to return safely to campus, do we know yet how much of the schedule will be fully online? And is it possible to use the summer sessions as maybe a quote unquote soft opening?
Yeah, that's a great question, great suggestion. And I think that kind of really does speak to this notion that, you know, we're just going to have to just recognize that this is going to happen in phases, and we're just going to kind of need to identify again, you know, what we're trying to get to and the different impacts from county, state, that are going to really kind of guide, you know, how that eventually unfolds.
Are provisions going to be made for those employees with pre-existing conditions?
Again, certainly we're going to adhere to, you know, state, county health, you know, just guidelines and, you know, suggested protocols. I think I would say that's definitely something that, you know, would be, you know, very helpful to have raised and identified as a question that needs to be, you know, resolved as we're moving through this process. And so, you know, these are the types of, you know, questions that we're hoping to make sure that, you know, again, we get the universe of topics included, so we can have a response and a recommendation when we get to that point.
For those employees who want to and can work from home, will they be given that option?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think, again, I think this is going to be another one of those, you know, where we're trying to head to, and then the different potential areas that, you know, to get to that point, depending upon, you know, county, state, kind of guidance and, you know, where we are with the public health crisis that we're in. I mean, that will really help to operationalize, you know, what that could look like. And so I would say, you know, this is an area where, you know, we would really greatly benefit from, I mean, more comments, more questions, more thinking in terms of, you know, I mean, particularly, you know, from the vantage point that you sit, you know, how would you consider that unfolding? How would that make the most sense? And, you know, I'm certainly not asking folks to write volumes on this, but I mean, just to kind of think about, you know, just some concerns or comments that you would want to be absolutely considered as that type of recommendation is being considered.
No more questions from the chat at the moment.
All right. Any comments, anything, I mean, folks that would like to kind of share just thoughts, and feel free to take yourself off Zoom, the mute. Oh, really? Nobody?
There was another one that just came in about the HVAC systems. Has the college purchased portable air filtration systems? And has the HVAC systems in every building been considered for proper air filtration?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I would say, I know that our colleagues in facilities maintenance at the district office are putting together, you know, a white paper that really underscores, you know, what has been done related to air filtration. I appreciate the suggestion and the comment about the portable air filtration systems, and you know, that's certainly something that, you know, I would encourage to be, you know, put into the consideration in terms of the universe of things to consider. I mean, it very well, it could present itself as, you know, some, I mean, something that, you know, should be considered for the point in time that we find ourselves. But again, I think it's important that people understand and know that this is an area of concern, and this is something that needs to be included in the overarching report. And thank you for suggesting that and asking those questions.
Someone wants to know if there's any comparison between our current requirement to be free of TB and a prospective COVID-19 vaccination requirement.
You know what? I do not know the answer to that one, but again, it's good to have it be part of the mix. It's good to think about that in the context of our TB requirements. So thank you for who's ever suggested that question. Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Christy. Sorry.
The cleaning schedule, I guess, of the restrooms. How will that be handled? How often will they be cleaned? That kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I mean, it's something we grapple with now. I mean, just, and then we're in a much smaller kind of operational footprint with our face-to-face labs. But I mean, you know, we've got to think about, you know, what number of custodians are coming, you know, obviously maintaining social distancing, and then, you know, what the frequency of kind of coming behind the classrooms are. And of course, you know, what that question, original question is, now we're at scale, and how do we incorporate all of that? So I appreciate the question. And, you know, I think, you know, we will have some more to share in terms of what that actually looks like. But again, I think we're trying to just get the universe of just questions, concerns, and comments as we're in this listening session.
There are a couple people concerned about protective barriers in those offices, you know, where there's a lot of people located. Has that been discussed yet?
Yeah, so I think this is sounding along the lines of plexiglass. And,
correct.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of consideration about this type of equipment. And I will say that on the positive side, you know, again, I think we're trying to identify areas that would be, you know, utilizing that. And I think at the same time, you know, this is certainly something new, and we certainly don't have this currently in the inventory. But I think what I want to underscore is that, you know, there's still resources remaining from the first CARES Act. There's, you know, state resources that were recently provided, as well as, you know, the recent federal, you know, COVID relief money that was just passed by Congress and signed by the president. All a long way of saying that, you know, we do have resources for this. It's a matter of trying to identify, you know, where do we need them? And so that's a very helpful question. And I think I just wanted to share that, there's definitely, an ability for us to act on that, when we determine what that plan is going to look like.
What are faculty rights when it comes to having clearly sick students in the classroom when we do reopen?
I'm sorry, Christy, what was that? I missed that last part.
So what are faculty rights when it comes to having students who are clearly sick in the classroom once we do reopen?
Yeah, no, great question. Again, I don't have the answer for that right now, but again, these are the types of questions, this is the type of information that we need to be considering and putting into kind of the overarching inventory of topics that need to be addressed when we eventually get to the recommendations in February.
Do you anticipate the campus having a mask mandate?
Well, I mean, we currently have a requirement that individuals coming to campus must wear a mask. I will say that, all of our essential employees who are on campus now, must wear a mask. And I will just, share that this has gotten much more formalized on the part of Cal OSHA. There was recent legislation that was passed that went into effect on the first of the year that it's very prescriptive in terms of tracking individuals, in terms of requiring professional development. There's actually videos that need to be watched, certifications that are being provided. And so, this is definitely, and wearing a mask is all part of that too. So, I mean, there's a reality that, we're going to have to comply with, state law.
Again, I think people are concerned about being able to be socially distanced when in offices. How is that going to work? Do you anticipate a change in schedules, that kind of thing?
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that. Again, these are great questions. These are exactly the things that we need to be considering, with the report. And again, I would encourage, as folks are hearing those questions, if it kind of jogs something in your mind, if it makes you think about, something tangential. I mean, certainly respond in the chat now, but also, use this as an opportunity too to use the website and to provide thoughts and comments as well. I wish I had all the answers today, but today's definitely not the answer day. Today's taking all of the comments and concerns and the questions.
Will formal recommendations on these matters be made by the appropriate participatory governance groups, including those groups would help us all feeling engaged?
Yeah, so I mean, I think my understanding of this process is, so we have the planning committee, we're doing the listening tours. Our charge is to come up with a recommendation, and then we are going to need to operationalize all of that. I would imagine, at that point, again, not ever having done this before, and also realizing that, it's many evolving and moving pieces in all of this, that we'll be engaging with, individuals constituent groups, individuals to operationalize, all of this. And so it feels like some of this is going to evolve with the passage of time and become a little more clear.
The CDC came out with a report last week that colleges reopening increased community spread by 50% compared to colleges that did not. How do you plan on educating the college community on how to prevent spread to the broader community?
Yeah, that's a great piece of information to know. And I would just say, as an aside, and this came up in the session this morning, I think if there's any reference material, anything that folks are just have seen that you think would be helpful to have as kind of an appendix, a resource, for this effort, please send along those footnotes, that reference material. I think another piece of information I know that was pretty sobering that folks learned last week was just particularly for LA City Unified School Districts, the reality that 1 in 3 students were testing positive for COVID, makes it really challenging to have, K-12 come back in the manner in which I know the administration is envisioning. But so again, just the reference material, and I mean, we will also, kind of similar to what we've done since our closed campus, but it's quite a bit of just a education, professional development effort. I would imagine this would be the same. We could potentially do something to definitely underscore the importance of the health and safety guidelines that we eventually land upon as a college, as a district. And so again, if folks have ideas and suggestions, that would be much appreciated.
Once opening is scheduled, will offices like the Business Services Office open before on-campus classes? And if so, is there an idea of how much ahead of on-campus instruction we might be on site?
Yeah, right now, I don't think there's not necessarily, again, we're at this kind of very beginning stage, but I think, for folks connected to the process, if folks have ideas or thoughts or questions, or maybe there's a piece of research, in terms of areas of the college that need to open up before the others, again, this is what we're trying to ask for feedback and ask for, information from the college community. I think there's no set kind of unfolding in terms of, or just kind of just scaling back to the college yet. But those are all things that I think, that will be considered as we're thinking about, what reopening will look like. And again, I think it just would be very helpful as well for folks to, think about, the operation of your respective area. And does it, I think the thing about this too, that I'm always marveling at is I think about some of the operational things that I was doing a year ago. And I know I was signing absence reports in triplicate and doing that across an entire division. And now, of course, things have changed dramatically in terms of how that's done. And so I think if folks can think about that a little bit when you're considering things like that question, that would be helpful.
How much, if any, will plans from other community colleges in the area, like Sierra and Delta, influence Los Rios' decision to reopen?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sorry, can you guys hear me? My gardeners just showed up. I'm sorry. Hopefully my husband goes and reels them in a little bit. So great question, Christy. I think, I know for the reopening team, we definitely have solicited and searched for plans at other California community colleges, outside California, community colleges outside of California, and as well have solicited information from, the local regional universities, Sac State, University of California. So I think we're looking at all of those things and wanting to, as much as possible, to ensure that, we're not leaving anything kind of untouched, and we've tried to, as much as possible, take as thorough an inventory. So yes, that is, but if folks, I would say if folks have come across something that they think, really captures, this is a spot on kind of recommendations, maybe operationalize it for student services, instruction. I think that would be super helpful, and we'd appreciate, having that reference and that information.
How is the district planning on handling the much needed expenses and enhancements required to reopen?
Well, I would say that in this area, you know, as I mentioned, there are a significant amount of one-time resources available. And so, you know, at the beginning of this, it does not feel like we're going to be limited. I mean, it feels like what we need, we're going to be able to acquire in terms of our, you know, health and safety equipment, PPE, things of that nature. I think where we may run into some challenges is, I mean, just the supply, because you can imagine not only will we be gearing up and ramping up for this, but you know, all of, you know, K-12 and of course higher ed has the same kind of expectation and goal.
Any consideration on how the campus will handle the intermittent use of the campus by people that are not students or employees, maybe those that are just cutting through or accessing light rail?
Oh, that's a good question. No, we have not kind of tackled that yet, but I'm very appreciative of having this brought up. This is actually, this is something obviously very, well, I think quite frankly, for many of our programs in our colleges, needs to be considered. So don't have a plan or idea yet, but again, I think if there's things about that situation that, you know, are really unique, and you have some suggestions and comments to add to help kind of further illuminate that, that'd be great to supply. And again, doesn't have to be exclusively in the chat. This could be something that you put into the website feedback forms.
Which I just posted again. Another
Yay,
question.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you. Thank you for that.
There's a lot of preparation to prepare the campus for reopening, especially in IT. Will these staff members be required to work on campus months in advance of reopening?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, quite frankly, that's something that, you know, we're, again, we grapple with some of that right now as a closed campus with only essential employees. But, you know, obviously you can imagine you don't just flick a switch and everything just comes back. It's not obviously for even IT or, I mean, for everything that we do as a college. So I appreciate that, that question. I can think of a lot of other areas that will similarly be in that same situation. And I think this is, again, one of those topics where it would be really helpful if, you know, folks had some particular specific ideas or comments or thoughts in terms of how that could unfold. And if there was a recommendation or just, you know, as you're thinking about that, to share in the website that's requesting feedback.
Does the district have a supply of PPE on the way, or do we already have some kind of inventory of it?
Yeah, we do actually. The state of California made a significant amount of pallets of PPE available across the entire district. You know, that has been inventoried. It's been distributed out across all of the colleges. We have a number of masks, face shields. I think we have thermometers. We have a lot of kind of an initial kind of allotment. There's likely some gaps. I know we didn't get a lot of N95 masks, but we have something to work off of. And again, you know, over the next few months, as we're thinking about, you know, what is going to be the scale and the duration of time to you know, we get to eventually this reopening, you know, we'll have time to plan and to, you know, make these purchases. I will say there's also been a lot of work at the state level in terms of the Foundation for California Community Colleges. They handle a lot of our kind of procurement issues that will result in, you know, very favorable pricing for the community colleges. And so they've set up a number of contracts related to this, but a number of contracts on a variety of other kind of areas that would be helpful to the system. So that's a good question, and you know, we'll definitely you know, try to take advantage of what we have and obviously plan for what we need.
There's no questions right now, but maybe you can talk about the communication of when these recommendations are in the report and how people will find them, when they'll be made public.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you, Christy. So again, you know, here we are at the stakeholder feedback portion of the timeline. And you know, this initial feedback report that's due on the 31st is, again, you know, meant to capture all of the comments and the questions from these listening sessions. And, you know, we'll be, you know, sharing that widely. I know there's a communication plan anticipated in terms of how that will be distributed. I mean, I think we're as well, you know, we're obviously looking to have, you know, these key issues and the guiding principles at least kind of well identified and articulated in the initial report. There will be then, of course, you know, some time to then put together this refined report, and that is due the 28th of February to the Chancellor. You know, that will take into account all of the information that's been shared, and, you know, come up with what is envisioned to be these high-level recommendations. And then, of course, post February 28th will be a period in which we'll, you know, very much work with constituent groups, individuals to operationalize those items. But, you know, again, this is a really critical first step in this process in terms of making sure that, you know, we have all of the appropriate and pertinent topics recognized, and, you know, we're taking that into consideration as we plan to reopen.
Nothing else yet?
Nothing else yet? Okay. Any comments that anybody would like to kind of take themselves off mute and just share? Any thoughts? I mean, things that maybe some burning issues, some things that you know, folks have been thinking about, and just I'd be happy to kind of hear from that if you take yourself off mute. All right. Well, I know we're also reaching our hour, so I certainly don't want to cut ourselves short, because I know we have 90 minutes. But, you know, I also recognize this is a very busy time of year, and you know, we certainly don't need to go to the very end. Any other questions come in, Christy?
Greg is wondering if we're prepared for mitigation against Legionnaire's disease as we return to campus and start using bathrooms and water fountains.
Yeah, well, I will tell you, I mean, that is something definitely we're going to be included in the report. I know our FM folks are very focused on that topic. It's been something that they have been thinking about, and at the same time, you know, while folks are not at the college in as regular a capacity as we have in the past, you know, there is still just kind of regular infrastructure and activities that need to continue. But yeah, that is something that I know it's been, that needs to be into the report, and it's also will be able to identify, you know, an appropriate, you know, kind of response to address that.
Have we considered a reduction on the ground schedule to allow for cleaning and keeping social distancing guidelines?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it really has to do with kind of the mix of, you know, where all our grounds and custodial staff kind of are connected. I mean, most of our ground staff are through District FM. And so they, regularly come to the campus and take care of grounds, but also a lot of infrastructure and heating, cooling, things of that nature. And of course, our custodian are home to our respective colleges. I think there's going to need to just be more grappling with the scale at which the cleaning will need to occur. And so, again, I appreciate that question. It's something we have to consider as we're considering scaling back up, and whether or not, we have, how we're going to do that with our existing, individuals, and whether or not that's sufficient. And so those are questions we're grappling with now. Anything else?
I had a question, Teresa. This is Hong, and I don't even know if you really know the answer, but I thought that I would put it out there. I'm just curious kind of what rationale our campus, or our district rather, is using to decide to reopen in the fall. I would love to be back on ground along with everybody else, but we are so much in a worse situation now than we were in March. So I'm just curious. We know that there's a vaccine available, but I think there's widespread probably agreement that the rollout of the vaccine maybe is not what we would like it to be. So the situation doesn't seem to indicate to me that it would be a good idea to reopen.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear, Hong. And I think that will be something that gets, well articulated and highlighted in the report in terms of, this notion of phasing, but also, the milestones that we're going to use to judge, whether or not we move to, the next phase. And, certainly public health guidance from the county, from the state, is going to figure very prominently in that. And so I appreciate that, what we're talking about is really kind of focused on, this reopening, but there's going to need to be this measured reality as we're progressing, through the next few months. Can't possibly, know what that looks like now, but I think we're all astute enough to realize that I don't think any of us envisioned that we would have been as away from the college as long as we had been, and kind of what was kind of unfolding when we left, and to think that we would be, here at the spot that we are at now.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. I appreciate that.
Teresa, Michael has raised his hand.
All right. Hi, Michael.
Kind of in a response to a question a minute ago about the vaccinations and such. From my understanding, we need about a 33% vaccination rate to really start moving this virus down. And so, as I mentioned before, it's a what we call a Fermi problem. Is we have about 365 million people in the United States, and if we're going to get enough vaccinations within the year, you're going to need to be vaccinating, you do the numbers, it's about 300,000 people in the United States a day. And so that's going to require a lot of vaccination sites. It's going to require a big supply of the vaccine and such. Otherwise, we're going to be in this state of wearing face masks and social distancing and all that kind of stuff for quite a while.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing that. I mean, I would say, please feel free to kind of just provide that in the feedback as well, either on the website or on the chat. That would be, that's very, very helpful context for everyone to have. Any other comments or just thoughts? All right, we'll start to kind of wrap this up a little bit, and
We can announce our winners.
oh, let's announce our winners. Who are our winners?
So the first three that got the answer correct was Raul Pasamonte, John Siemens, and Alex Casareno.
Yay! All right. Okay. Yay. Congrats. You will be getting something in the mail. Thank you for participating. All right. And then this last slide is a little bit personal for me. This is a picture of my dad, actually. My pop, he just got his vaccination yesterday. And, you know, I mean, speaks volumes to what I'm hearing from folks talk about, like the rollout of this. I mean, he just sent an email on Friday and his doctor like called him up, I guess on Monday, and they said, hey, what time do you want to come? 10:30 or 11? And he's not in a nursing facility, and you know, he's 85, so he certainly qualifies in that regard. But I think, you know, and I don't know if others have maybe done some of this too, but I know a couple weeks ago, as the vaccines were starting to be rolled out, you know, there's a lot to be said about just kind of watching people be administered the vaccine. It seemed to be kind of calming, kind of a tremendous amount of relief. So, you know, I think for myself, as I think about this and I think about this activity that we're trying to do here at CRC and across the district, I mean, paramount for all of this is, you know, everyone's, you know, health and safety as we prepare for this reopening. So just kind of re-energizes me to think about like where we could, you know, possibly, you know, all be able to have the vaccination, be able to kind of come back. So just kind of throwing that out there. And a big thank you for spending your time with us this afternoon. As I mentioned, you know, this is not the only time to provide, you know, feedback. You'll have time to provide feedback on the website, and you know, again, this is definitely going to be a process, and it's going to be successful to the extent that we can, you know, certainly engage everyone in it. Christy, I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to add, any kind of just summary in terms of stuff.
No, I think you got it.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I think we had maybe, I don't know, about 70 people?
At the height, 84.
84. All right. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Take care.